So this year, we're very fortunate to have Mr. Eric Cooper. Eric is the president and the CEO of the San Antonio Food Bank. Eric runs one of the largest hunger relief organizations in Southwest Texas through a network of more than 530 nonprofit agencies and a myriad of distribution programs. The San Antonio Food Bank provides, now you listen carefully, provides more than 61 million pounds of food and grocery items to needy Texans in a 16-county service area. That just makes me tired thinking about it. In 2001, the San Antonio Food Bank selected Eric to become the youngest executive director in the history of its organization. During his 14-year tenure, the San Antonio Food Bank has grown to more than 180 employees, increased food distributions from 10 million pounds to more than 61 million pounds last year, increased the number and the impact of its programs, and was awarded Food Bank of the Year in 2007 by Feeding America, the national network of 200-plus food banks. Locally, Eric serves on a number of committees around food and nutrition, such as the Mayor's Fitness Council Executive Committee and chair of the Nutrition Committee. At the state level, he has served on the Executive Committee for Feeding Texas. Nationally, he has served on several of the Feeding America's committees and is chair of the New Business Marketing Solutions Committee. Eric was also recognized as the Executive of the Year in 2011 by Feeding America. Prior to the San Antonio Food Bank, Eric served as the product donations manager for the North Texas Food Bank. He began his career at the Utah Food Bank as the volunteer and food drive coordinator, and then he worked his way up to the deputy director. Throughout his 20 years of career in the food bank, Eric's track record has been efficient and effective. Eric has a tremendous personal story and has walked a long journey for such a young man. So graduates, I think you're going to be inspired. I think you will be motivated, and you will know there's hope in the future after Eric speaks with you today. So welcome, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Thank you, Dean Zuniga, and again, congratulations, Dr. Brown. 50 years Lee College has been educating students, and I am so excited to be here to make that journey from San Antonio to share with you a little bit about the food bank, its work to feed 58,000 people each week. To do that this last year, we raised about $131 million in support. That's food, money, time, and voice. Voice, I always say, we raise voice in a couple of ways. One, in advocacy, but also in prayer. And when you think about being an advocate, right, you got to tell the story, you got to share your experience. And that's what I'm going to challenge you graduates today to do. Raise your voice, right? You were given a chance. A lot of us went to college. You guys got scholarshiped, right? You guys have been invested in, and so you need to return that investment. Do it by making us proud. Doing it by being an alum, helping those future students. This tradition of educating takes risk, takes folks willing to go out on a limb, willing to take a chance. Texas Department of Criminal Justice and Lee College have gone out on that limb. But it takes a community to get their backs, to become an advocate, to share and to encourage whether that's elected officials, community members, family members, the public at large, that it's worth doing. In fact, if we invest $1 today in educating guys behind bars, we can save $5 in the future. That's a return on the investment, right? So I grew up in North Texas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, but boy, May is the month of mothers, right? Mother's Day. She went into that delivery room, a woman. She came out a mom, and her life was changed. Motherhood, it's a life sentence. It's a life sentence, right? She's always going to worry. So my mom raised 6 kids. My oldest brother, Mike, is a product of TDCJ. Struggled with alcohol, kept driving, got incarcerated. Now, my mom, when folks would come to the house, she'd always brag about all the kids, and I noticed when folks would ask about my older brother, she changed the subject. She was embarrassed. She didn't really want to talk about it. And when I think about all of us, I think about how unique we are, right? Each one of us being an individual, each one of us having opportunities, each one of us having gifts, talents, abilities. You are unique. There's a lot of things that make you unique, but one of the things that makes you unique is your fingerprint, right? And in the space of proof and evidence, fingerprints can detect whether or not someone's been there, right? And it's unique. It's unique to you, like a snowflake, only one of its kind. But when that evidence is found, it says some truth. It says some fact, right? Evidence. So a lot of times we leave evidence behind in situations where maybe we're not so proud. And for my mom, there was some pretty good evidence stacked against my brother that made her feel ashamed. But I want to kind of move to evidence that makes us proud. That when you think of what's the purpose of life, when you think of why are we here, when you think of have I made a difference in the world, have I made it better, where's your fingerprint? Have you left a fingerprint in that space? Today, you left a fingerprint. And it's a fingerprint that we will all be proud of. Most of all, your mother. Right? Dr. Brown kind of said this is a time to be proud, right? Maybe you haven't felt like you've had a lot to be proud of. But I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. If you are the first child in your family to graduate from college, it's a big chunk. That's a fingerprint. That's a fingerprint, right? All right? Let that be the evidence. Let that be the evidence that now moves you forward, right? So I grew up, like I said, in a small town in North Texas called Argyle. Does anyone know where Argyle's at? One. For all of you that don't know where Argyle's at, it's next to Drop. You know where Drop is? Crum. You know where Crum, Ponder? There's some small Texas towns. But I was blessed, grew up having great parents and They afforded me a lot of opportunity. But as I was leaving the house to make my way in the world, my mom and dad were struggling with their relationship and ended up getting divorced. My dad actually moved from Argyle to Portland, Oregon, and quickly became what I guess most people would call a deadbeat dad. My mom still had my little brother and sister at the house, and she had raised kids her whole life and hadn't ever worked outside the home, but now with my dad gone and without any financial support, she was trying to figure out how she was going to make ends meet. She started to work and was trying to sell the house and get into a more affordable car. I was young, I was an entrepreneur, I was a student, but through my business I was able to just help my mom do what I could. I'd pay the electric bill, and oftentimes I was buying food so that they'd have something to eat. And then there was that big annual property tax bill that would come, and I would do what I could. But I saw for my little brother and sister, it wasn't going to be the kind of childhood I had. I mean, I got to play soccer and sports, wear Nikes. They were worried about that next meal. They were worried about whether or not they'd have their home. So as every check I wrote, I thought, man, this whole thing started because my dad shirked his responsibilities. My dad blew them off. My dad didn't man up. And I started to become very angry, frustrated, bitter. And I didn't want to talk to him. But then after 2 years of writing checks, I thought, somebody needs to hold that guy accountable. Somebody needs to reach out and give him an earful. And I'm the one to do it. So I asked my mom, I said, hey, I know he went to work in Portland. Do you know how to reach him? She said, well, I know this company that he went to go work for. You could call them. So I did, and they said, hey, he hasn't worked here in 1.5 years. We don't know what to tell you. I said, well, I'm his son. I'm looking for him. They said, well, he lived at these apartments. You can call them. I called over there. They said he hadn't lived there in 1.5 years. I said, well, all right, where do I go from here? Well, this was well before Al Gore had invented the internet. You couldn't just Google somebody. So I thought there's one organization that knows everything about all of us, and that's the IRS. I figured if my dad had a new job, maybe they had an address. They just told me, no, what we've got is what you've got, but if you do find him, tell him we're looking for him now too. So I was told to call the local police department there in Oregon and Portland and maybe file a missing person. And when I did that, they said, well, you haven't seen him in 2 years. How do you know that he's missing? You might want to hire a private detective. So I thought, well, I can't really do that. So being young and naive, I thought, well, I'll just go find him on my own. So I had a picture of my dad that I put on the flyer, and I put some words at the bottom of the flyer that just said he was missing, and if anyone had seen him, here's my phone number, call me. Made lots and lots of copies, filled a suitcase, flew to Portland. It's the first time I've ever been to Oregon before, and for a Texan, they've got some big things they call mountains. It was beautiful, beautiful, very green. But I rented a car and I drove to the apartments that he once lived at 1.5 years earlier and thought that might be the best place to start. I started knocking on doors and asking people if they knew him or had seen him. I'd hold up the flyer, and if they didn't answer or they didn't want to answer, I'd stick the flyer in their door. And after spending about half a day meeting lots of interesting folks, I met a woman that said, yeah, your dad, he used to live here. I said, yeah. And she said, I used to see him across town at this gas station. If you go over there, you might find him. So I headed over there, and only to be told, no, he doesn't work here anymore. We think he used to hang out at this transmission shop. So I went over there, and as I'm driving to this transmission shop, I realized that Portland, like many big cities, has two sides, a good side and a not-so-good side. This happened to be in the not-so-good side, and a lot of graffiti and a lot of abandoned buildings. And as I could see the transmission shop up on the street up ahead, I could see the parking lot, and it was empty. And I had assumed as I was driving up, I thought, well, it must be closed, and should I pull in or just keep driving? And corner of the parking lot, there were some youth, looked like they were a little misguided, looked like they were in a gang, and I thought, oh man, I'm gonna pull in that parking lot, and maybe I'm gonna lose this rental car. I tried to save some money, and I didn't take out the insurance, so I was like, this could be dicey. On the other side of the transmission shop was an alleyway between an abandoned building, and there was these homeless guys hanging out, kind of meddling around. And I pulled into the parking lot, and at that point I could see the front door, and in the window was a big closed sign. And I don't know what it was, but when I saw that sign, I just became overwhelmed with discouragement. And all of a sudden I had this thought: what were you thinking? You've traveled to a state you've never been to. You're looking for a needle in the haystack. You're foolish. Why are you doing this? And that overwhelming sense of discouragement just made me doubt, like, what was I thinking? I mean, this is a joke. I'm a joke. I've spent money, time, effort chasing something that there's no way I'm going to be successful. But it was in that moment that I felt this prompting just to say a quick word of prayer, to say, man, if there's even a chance, help me, guide me, direct me. Please, Heavenly Father, if I'm even on the right continent, help me. Well, all of a sudden I got this kind of feeling of comfort, and I was looking at this rental car map, trying to figure out where I'd go, and out of the corner of my eye, I glanced again at those homeless guys that were in that alleyway, and I looked at one of them, and it was my dad. And I watched him for a minute, and as I watched him, I got out of the car, and then I just yelled, "Dad." And he looked up, and then all of a sudden he came running towards me, and the first thing he said was, "Son, I knew you would come. I knew you would come." And the only thing I could say was, "Well, you look hungry." And he said, "I am." I said, "Well, get in the car." And we drove up the street. On the way to the transmission shop, I'd passed this Denny's, and I thought, well, we'll go there for lunch. And when we got there to that Denny's, we walked in. We were greeted by this maitre d' who looked at me, looked at my dad, then looked back at me and said, "Would you like a table for one?" Well, my heart sank, right? I knew what she was getting at. I knew it just didn't make sense, right? Some young kid, so young, so handsome. And then this bum. But he wasn't a bum to me. He was my dad. He taught me how to throw a spiral. He made me feel safe when I was afraid. He provided. But wasn't even going to be recognized as a human being in a Denny's. Well, I told her, no, table for two. We sat down, we started to eat, and my dad quickly wanted to apologize. He felt like, man, I did everybody wrong. I did your mom wrong. I did you wrong. I'm so sorry. And just started to unravel, and how he felt he deserved everything he was getting. And again, I think that's a message for you, right? That place of hopelessness that thinks that we would be unworthy of anyone ever caring about us is a pretty desperate place. Well, for me, it really was not about what our past had been. All of a sudden, that power of forgiveness flooded my heart, and I couldn't even really remember the anger or frustration or anything. It really wasn't about what our past had been. It was what our future was going to be. What our future was going to be. I said, well, Dad, you're coming home with me. And he said, no, I'm okay. Just knowing you care is all I need. I said, well, where do you live? He lived in this abandoned camper trailer. It didn't have running water, electricity. I said, well, how do you eat? He says, well, this woman, she drives a little catering truck. She feeds the homeless. And I'm the beneficiary of her generosity. So you can imagine I flew home from Portland screwed up, right? I could now no longer see someone in need as a stranger. I knew they were someone's dad. It was a mom, it was a brother, it was a sister. And what was I doing about it? A fingerprint. Evidence. You've been given much. Today is a celebration of that gift. What will you give? In this journey that's now 23 years long of working to set the table for those that are hungry, I realize that a charity serves those with resources and those without. And it's in serving those with resources that we're given the greatest gift to live in our finest hour, and that's when we're serving. I commend the faculty at Lee College because they serve. They give time, knowledge, love. As we think of our mothers, right, think of Lee looking after you. But now is your time to be in that finest hour, that place of service. And I pray that you will be everything that you were intended to be. That if ever you think or doubt or feel discouraged, overwhelmed, that you replace it with doubt. You replace that doubt with hope. That you know that you can accomplish because you already have in an environment that says you couldn't. All right? We don't want to see you back in this place. What we want to see is the success of your posterity because of the decisions you've made. And that's the positive, right? Past decisions got you to a place that needs to be forgotten. Current decisions will get you to a place that will be revered and remembered and will be your legacy. God bless you guys. Thank you.